Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivarada. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Bhaja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhaja Jana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Bhaja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhaja Jana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashotara Shata Shishmad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashotara Shata Shishmad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Yamuna Maye Ki Jai. Ganga Maye Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Shmuta Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityananda Namaste Saraswati Gauranga Vicharini Nirvishwata Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, Chapter 1, entitled The First Step in God Realization, Text 15, from the word for word. Antakale tu Purushaha Agate Gatasadvasaha Chindyat Asanga Shastrena Spriham Dehe Anu Ye Cha Tam Antakale tu Purusha Agate Gatasadvasaha Chindyara Sangas Shastrena Spriham Dehe Nuye Chatam Antakale tu Purusha Agate Gatasadvasaha Chindyara Sangas Shastrena Spriham Dehe Nuye Chatam Antakale tu Purusha Agate Gatasadvasaha Chindyara Sangas Shastrena Spriham Dehe Nuye Chatam
Antakale tu Purusha
Antakale tu Purusha
Agate Gatasadvasaha
Agate Gatasadvasaha
Chindyara Sangha Shastrena
Chindyara Sangha Shastrena
Viham Dehe Nuye Chatam
Spriham Dehe Nuye Chatam
Antakale tu Purusha
Antakale tu Purusha
Agate Gata Sadvasaha
Agate Gatasadvasaha
Chindyata Sangha Shastrena
Chindyara Sangha Shastrena
Sprihang Dehe Nuye Chatam
Spriham Dehe Chunye Chatam
Antakale tu Purusha
Antakale tu Purusha
Agate Gata Sarvasaha
Agate gata sadvasaha
Chindyara Sangha Shastrena
Chindyara Sangha Shastrena
Spriham Dehe Nuyechatam
Spriham Dehe Nuyechatam
Antakale tu Purusha
Antakale tu Purusha
Agate Gata Sadvasaha
Agate gata sadvasaha
Chindyada Sangha Shastrena
Chindyara Sangha Shastrena
Spriham Dehi Nuyechatam
Spriham Dehe Nuyechatam
Antakale tu Purusha
Antakale tu Purusha
Agate Gata Sarvasaha
Agate gata sadvasaha
Chinyara Sangha Shastrena
Chindyara Sangha Shastrena
Spriham Dehe Nuye Chatam
Spriham Dehe Nuyechatam
Antakale tu Purusha
Antakale tu Purusha
Agate Gata Sadvasaha
Agate gata sadvasaha
Chindyara Sangha Shastrena
Chindyara Sangha Shastrena
Spriham Dehe Nuyechatam
Spriham Dehe Nuyechatam
Antakale tu Purusha
Antakale tu Purusha
Agate Gata Sarvasaha
Agate gata sadvasaha
Chindyara Sangha Sastrena
Chindyata Sangha Sastrena
Spriham Dehe Nuyechatam
Spriham Dehe Nuyechatam
Antakale tu Purusha
Antakale tu Purusha
Agate Gata Sadvasaha
Agate gata sadvasaha
Chindyada Sangha Shastrena
Chindyara Sangha Shastrena
Spriham Dehe Nuyechatam
Spriham Dehe Nuyechatam
Antakale tu Purusha
Antakale tu Purusha
Agate Gata Sarvasaha
Agate gata sarvasaha
Chindyara Sangha Shastrena
Chindyara Sangha Shastrena
Spriham Dehe Nuyechatam
Spriham Dehe Nuyechatam. Devotees online,
Antakale tu Purusha Agate Gata Sadvasaha
Agate gata sarvasaha
Chinyad Asanga Sastrena
Chindyara Sangha Shastrena
Spriham Dehe Nu Ye Chatam
Spriham Dehe Nuyechatam. Anyone else? Antekale, at the last stage of life. Tu, but, Purushaha, a person. Agate, having arrived. Gata sadhasaha, without any fear of death. Jindyat, all must cut off. Asanga, non-attachment. Shastrena, by the weapon of. Spriham, all desires. Dehe, in the matter of the material tabernacle. Anu, pertaining. Ye, all that. Cha, also. Tam, them. Translation. At the last stage of one's life, one should be bold enough not to be afraid of death. But one must cut off all attachment to the material body and everything pertaining to it and all desires thereof. Purport. The foolishness of gross materialism is that people think of making a permanent settlement in this world. Although it is a settled fact that one has to give up everything here that has been created by valuable human energy. Great statesmen, scientists, philosophers, etc., who are foolish, without any information of the spirit soul, think that this life of a few years only is all in all, and that there is nothing more after death. This poor fund of knowledge, even in the so-called learned circles of the world, is killing the vitality of human energy, and the awful result is being keenly felt. And yet the foolish materialistic men do not care about what is going to happen in the next life. The preliminary instruction in the Bhagavad Gita is that one should know that the identity of the individual living entity is not lost, even after the end of this present body, which is nothing but an outward dress only. As one changes an old garment, so the individual living being also changes his body, and this change of body is called death. Death is therefore a process of changing the body at the end of the duration of the present life. An intelligent person must be prepared for this and must try to have the best type of body in the next life. The best type of body is a spiritual body, which is obtained by those who go back to the kingdom of God or enter the realm of Brahman. In the second chapter of this canto, this matter will be broadly discussed, but as far as the change of body is concerned, one must prepare now for the next life. Foolish people attach more importance to the present temporary life, and thus the foolish leaders make appeals to the body and the bodily relations. The bodily relations extend not only to this body, but also to the family members, wife, children, society, country, and so many other things which end at the end of life. After death, one forgets everything about the present bodily relations. We have a little experience of this at night when we go to sleep. While sleeping, we forget everything about this body and bodily relations, although this forgetfulness is a temporary situation for only a few hours. Death is nothing but sleeping for a few months in order to develop another term of bodily encagement, which we are awarded by the law of nature according to our aspiration. Therefore, one has only to change the aspiration during the course of this present body, and for this there is need of training in the current duration of human life. This training can be begun at any stage of life, or even a few seconds before death. But the usual procedure is for one to get the training from very early life, from the stage of brahmacharya, and gradually progress to the grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasa, orders of life. The institution which gives such training is called varnashram dharma, or the system of Sanatana Dharma, the best procedure for making the human life perfect. One is therefore required to give up the attachment to family or social or political life just at the age of 50 years, if not earlier, and the training in the vanaprastha and sannyas ashrams is given for preparation of the next life. Foolish materialists, in the garb of leaders of the people in general, stick to family affairs without attempting to cut off relations with them, and thus they become victims of nature's law and get gross bodies again, according to their work. Such foolish leaders may have some respect for the people at the end of life, but that does not mean that such leaders will be immune to the natural laws under which everyone is tightly bound by the hands and feet. The best thing, therefore, that everyone voluntarily gives up family relations by transferring the attachment from family, society, country, and everything thereof to the devotional service of the Lord. It is stated herein that one should give up all desires of family attachment. One must have a chance for better desires. Otherwise, there is no chance of giving up such morbid desires. Desire is the concomitant factor of the living entity. The living entity is eternal, and therefore his desires, which are natural for a living being, are also eternal. One cannot, therefore, stop desiring, but the subject matter for desires can be changed. So one must develop the desires for returning home, back to Godhead, and automatically the desires for material gain, material honor, and material popularity will diminish in proportion to the development of devotional service. A living being is meant for service activities, and his desires are centered around such a service attitude. Beginning from the top executive head of the state down to the insignificant pauper in the street, all are rendering some sort of service to others. The perfection of such a service attitude is only attained simply by transferring the desire of service from matter to spirit, or from Satan to God. Antakale tu purusha agate gata sadvasaha chindyara sangha shastrena spriham dehe nuyechatam. Translation. At the last stage of one's life, one should be bold enough not to be afraid of death, but one must cut off all attachment to the material body and everything pertaining to it, and all desires thereof. So, we are riding in an airplane, and we're spending a lot of time and energy to decorate the seat, for which we only have a temporary stay. We go into the bathroom and we start decorating it, even though it's a place to go in and come out. We're spending a lot of energy polishing the cage for a bird, but we're forgetting to feed the bird. Everything that we create in this material world is perishable. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Dukhalayam ashashvatam, that this place is full of miseries and it's also temporary. This nature is temporary nature. It's Krishna's separated energies. Bhumirapo nalo vayu kang manoburir evacha ahankara iti yang me bina prakritir ashadha. That earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, altogether these 8 comprise my separated material energies. The Lord has 3 energies, primarily. Of course, he has unlimited energies, which are Parasta Shaktir Vividhaya Shuryate. That Krishna, the Lord, he has unlimited energies, but broadly speaking, they're categorized into 3. There's the material energy, which is temporary and always mutable. It's manifested and unmanifested. That's described in Bhagavad Gita, that this world and all the hosts of beings are actually helplessly dissolved in due course of time. That's a temporary material energy. Then we have the marginal energy, which is all the unlimited living entities who populate this material world and the spiritual world. But as Prabhupada discussed at the end of the purport, they have either of two types of service attitudes, which determines where they're placed within Krishna's creation. That's either the spiritual energy or the material energy. The marginal energy is the Tatastha Shakti. We are ourselves Jiva Bhutam. We are minute living entities. Besides ourselves, within this same body resides another knower of the body. That's the Supreme Lord, the Super Soul, residing in everyone's hearts. Hridaya Arjuna Tishtati, that he's sitting there. And we ourselves are Brahmayan Sarvabhutani. Mayaya, what is it? Yantra Rudhani Mayaya. That we are ourselves wandering. And we are wandering around this universe, seated as on a machine, made of the material energy. Whose energy is it? Krishna says, Manmaya Mamupashrita, that Daivihesha Gunamayi, that this is my energy. It's of mine, it's of my energy. That, and if we actually surrender to Krishna, then we can actually transcend this material energy, which is keeping everyone locked up. So, Prahlad Maharaj has some prayers that he speaks to his father, that people are completely hopeless just chasing after these things, and they're chewing the chewed. So, Maharaj Yudhishthir, he was in Mahabharata, he met with a stork. This stork prohibited Maharaj Yudhishthir as well as Maharaj Yudhishthir's 4 brothers, which are named the Pandavas, from drinking from this reservoir of water until the brothers and Maharaj Yudhishthir satisfied the inquiries or the questions of this stork. Then, so this stork was saying, or this bird was saying that, what is the most wonderful thing? And Maharaj Yudhishthir said, in spite of everybody seeing all their family members and everything that they know in this world dying or dissipating, disappearing, still we think we're going to live forever. So Prabhupada goes on and he says that because we're missing this knowledge that the soul is eternal and we are passing in the temporary material bodies, and we're meant to revive our dormant service attitude towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead and go back home back to Godhead. Because we're missing this, we're feeling the pangs. We're keenly feeling the pangs of suffering in this material world. So we're suffering for want of knowledge. And this movement, Krishna consciousness movement, is to bring this spiritual knowledge to everybody all over the world. Irregardless of caste, creed, nation, XYZ, according to the bodily arrangements, everybody needs Krishna because Krishna is the father of everyone. Aham bija pradapita says, I am the father of every living entity. And he cares for us greatly. And he himself is feeling the pangs of separation from us because he knows how much we are suffering without him. And just like the good father never forgets his son and always desires that his son come back home and be part of the family, continue the family line. Similarly, Krishna desires that we all the living entities, we all actually revive our dormant service attitude towards him, as opposed to nation, family, country, and go back home, back to Godhead. So Lord Chaitanya has come to teach us these things. He's come to preach Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and he asks us to become perfect in the science of Krishna and then to spread this everywhere to every person we meet. He asks us to become guru. He asks us to become qualified by taking such a realized spiritual master as our life and soul, as our worshipable deity who can teach us the science of Krishna. And by so doing, who has seen the truth, Tattva Darshinaha. Krishna describes himself, what his process for knowledge is. How do we get knowledge? We have to hear. So Lord Chaitanya himself, he came and he took initiation into the Sampradaya. He received that knowledge and then he preached it. So Prabhupada mentions here that we're passing through the bodies. Does anybody know a verse? Dehinosmin yata dehe komaram yovanam jara tata dehantara praptir dhiras tatra namuyati. Right? That we are passing in this life from boyhood to youth to old age. Similarly, tata dehantara praptir. When we actually get rid of this body, quit this body, then we'll get a new one. And the self-realized soul is not bewildered. Dhiras tatra namuyati. Okay, so the system of varnashram dharma is discussed in chapter 4 as well. Chaturvarnya maya shrishtam guna karma vibhagashaha tasya kartaram apimam vidya kartaram avyayam. That the Krishna is stating, I have created this system, human society, in 4 orders of life. And Prabhupada makes some arguments. You'll find these four classes of men in every society, whether you label it or not. There's always an intelligent class. Their tendency is for study. Their tendency is for philosophy. Their tendency is for investigation. Such a class can be understood to be this Brahmanical class. Then there's the warrior or the administrative class, Kshatriyas. Then there's the mercantile class, the Vaishyas, the Shudras, the worker class. Pairing with these 4, there's also the spiritual orders, Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. And with these 4 orders of spiritual life, which Prabhupada is specifically mentioning here in the purport, we go through the stages of attachment. And in the first stages, we're meant to take knowledge as a brahmachari. But we should take this training. Prabhupada uses this word training. We're meant for training. And actually, devotees remain bhaktas. We have a tendency, or we have a habit, as Prabhupada asks us, to call new devotees bhaktas. But we remain bhaktas to perfection. There's actually many prayers from the acharyas. One is Shuddha Bhakta, means a pure devotee, completely pure devotee. Also we say Bhakta Prahlad, that Prahlad Maharaj, who's the most wonderful devotee of Lord Nrsimhadev, most wonderful devotee of Lord Vishnu, he's a Bhakta. So we never stop being a Bhakta. We never stop becoming trained. And as much as we have that humble, submissive attitude to be trained and to receive guidance, then Krishna will help and he'll reciprocate with that. And we don't have to stop learning, because the spiritual world is infinite. Unlike this material world, you reach a cap. Well, we figured everything out. I guess we'll just, we'll just give ourselves a raise and just go to Cancun. There's nothing else to do. We did it. Right? No. And actually, as a seeker of the absolute truth, we must do so in every instance, every circumstance, without fail. So, these are some points that I was thinking about. Prabhupada sums it up by saying that we have to give up this attachment. And desire is essentially to serve. And we are serving in this material world to get some pleasure. We're getting some rasa, some mellow, some pleasure. I serve my cat. It feels good. Feels nice. He's so cuddly and he gives me a nice touch with his tail. You know what I mean? When I give him the little kisses and I give him the little food, why not? It's nice, right? Seriously. But the pleasure to give that affection towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternal. That's called Sanatan Dharma. I have a dharma to take care of my cat. Somehow or another, he may have come in my life. I may feel very obligated. But the real dharma of the soul, the real nature of the soul, the real duty of the soul is to render that affectionate, loving service towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the spiritual master who's become perfect in that process by service and surrender to his spiritual master can teach us how to become such a surrendered servant to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So thank you, devotees, so much. Please forgive me for any offenses. Devotees would like to share something? Jai Keshava? I think Radha Stali had something too.
Hare Krishna. Yesterday, Radha Stali and I were reading Srimad Bhagavatam, and we came upon a nice verse and a purport, but I have a little doubt about the purport. It's kind of related to this text. So the text is Canto 4, Chapter 24, Text 29. A person who executes his occupational duty properly for 100 births becomes qualified to occupy the post of Brahma. And if he becomes more qualified, he can approach Lord Shiva. A person who is directly surrendered to Lord Krishna or Vishnu in unalloyed devotional service is immediately promoted to the spiritual planets. Lord Shiva and other demigods attain these planets after the destruction of this material world. So here's just a little purport, and I'll ask the question. Okay, I'll just read the part that I have a question about. Prabhupada says, "Let us begin tracing the evolutionary process from the point of devastation, pralaya, when the whole universe is filled with water. At that time, there are many fishes and other aquatics, and from these aquatics evolve creepers, trees, and so on. From these insects and reptiles evolve, and from them birds, beasts, and then human beings, and finally civilized human beings. Now the civilized human being is at a junction where he can make further evolutionary progress in spiritual life. Here it is stated, Swadharma Nishtaha, that when a living entity comes to a civilized form of life, there must be Swadharma, social divisions according to one's work and qualifications. This is indicated in Bhagavad Gita 4.13, Chaturvarna Maya Shishtam Guna Karma Vibhagashaha. According to the three modes of material nature and the work ascribed to them, the four divisions of human society were created by me. So according to this purport, at least what I'm reading, Prabhupada's describing evolution as starting from the ocean and the aquatics, going up to the reptiles, insects, reptiles, trees, birds, beasts, finally human beings. And then he's saying after that, he establishes the four orders of, or Varnashram Dharma. And from there, we progress to spiritual life. So I find that quite fascinating, because it's not ever just, I've never read a description of like that before. I've always heard other devotees talk about, this is not really how it happens from like one species to another, this evolutionary process. So anyway, I wonder if you have a comment about this, because it's kind of confusing to me from other things I've heard, but Prabhupada's saying it himself. Anyway.
Maharaj, did you want to speak something on this point or another point? Okay, just let us know we're ready. From what I hear is that we have an evolutionary process as a soul transmigrating. That according to nature's laws, the soul is the soul's body or engagement is evolving in consciousness. Like, I receive a body according to my aspiration and my work. That was discussed in the purport. And we're transferred to the next body just as an aroma is carried by the wind. And whatever we are conscious of at the time of death, then that state we will attain without fail. But when we get placed in the lower species of life, which the lowest are the aquatic species. Maharaj?
Yeah, that's correct. The evolution that Prabhupada's referring to is not evolution of the different bodies, but it's evolution of the consciousness. The consciousness from the aquatics is very low, and then as one gets a different body of a bird, it's higher. And when one gets the body of a quadruped, it's higher. And when one gets a body of the human being, then it's the highest in intelligence. And with that intelligence, that evolved intelligence. It's not exactly evolved the way we think of evolution, the way Darwin presented it. But it's evolution in the sense that there is a different levels of intelligence. But actually, it's just for the body, because the soul is transcendental to these bodies. It has nothing to do with these bodies, but it's temporarily traveling through them.
So he kind of says it in an interesting way, but we can understand that, we can see that practically what Maharaj was speaking, that if you go to a tree and you harm the tree, or you bludgeon the tree, or you slice it or cut it, it's alive, but he doesn't have any ability to actually retaliate in any way. His consciousness is very low. But as soon as you go to a small child and you give him a pinch, he said, "What?" So his consciousness is much higher, much more aware, much more able to react and to respond like that. And the civilized human beings, they are meant to take up the Varnashram system, be even more high consciousness, more refined, more cultured. And when we become perfected in taking the Varnashram system, what does it go towards? It goes towards Krishna consciousness. This is the way to perfect the human life. Because we can be in a human body, which we have the opportunity to go to the spiritual world, but we waste it if we live like animals. Then what we see is the Daivi Netrena, the higher authorities, Krishna's servants, ultimately Krishna himself from within the heart, he sees, oh, this child of mine wants to enjoy in this type of material body. Very quickly I will give him that body. So next life, we become dog. And if we're happy with that, then if we're happy to become dog next life, then how is it very reasonable to say that our consciousness is actually on a human level? It's not very thoughtful. So what can you do for such persons? Right? What can we do? We'll chant the holy names and they will hear. And maybe they'll chant too. And we'll also give prasadam, which is very tasty. So let's take prasadam. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, all glories to the assembled devotees.